Hello and welcome back to the second ever episode of the Trick Play Podcast. I'm Simon Chaskovsky and I'm here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. In this episode, we will be talking about some of the big trades that went down in both the NHL and the NBA. Then we'll move on to the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2023 and who they might have missed. And of course, we'll make sure to touch on how somehow we got to the point where the biggest fight in the world is between the guy who invented your mom's favorite app and Joe Rogan's smoking buddy. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
I am ready as ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest fight since Conor McGregor and Mayweather. I don't know why for some reason, Floyd Mayweather. Why did I forget his name? Okay, not important. The biggest fight since McGregor and Mayweather is in the talks right now. And God, of all the names I would have thrown out there for who it was going to be, I was not thinking Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. I personally can say I'm a big fight fan for a lot of things, especially the UFC. And if you were to ask me a year ago what the chances were of Elon Musk getting into the octagon and trying to beat the crap out of the guy who invented Facebook, I would not have said that was one of the things that was going to happen. I don't know about you, Caleb.
Yeah, no. That kind of came out of nowhere, right? It's kind of the perfect storm of, just insane, random internet garbage to happen, right? It's the combination of Mark Zuckerberg actually being, good at jiu-jitsu and the combination of Elon Musk giving the, I don't give
Elon Musk
single crap. Yeah, he quote unquote has fought before, but he, the attitude of if you're gonna give him something, he's gonna do it.
There's so many things that I love about this entire thing that's been happening. One of my favorite things was the interview that Elon Musk gave on the entire thing. He didn't. Just to be clear, I don't believe he started by saying he had some jiu-jitsu experience or whatever. I don't think he started with that. He started with the fact that he grew up in South Africa and has fought before.
Oh, well,
which,
for Musk, that's all he has going for him. But Zuckerberg is actually... Zuckerberg
oh, yeah, Zuckerberg, yeah. That's not what I'm saying. I'm arguing for Musk because I can't believe anybody who is about to get into an octagon in a situation, in a cage fight, where you have to defend yourself against a professional fighter. Wow, that's not Mark Zuckerberg. Elon Musk... he is making the argument for wanting to get into the same cage as all these professional fighters with the fact that he has fought before, which is mind-boggling to me, and I love it so much.
Yeah, I don't think he's paying attention to the fact that he's outmatched, but I've seen the argument because of course I peruse Instagram comment section. I've seen people arguing that Musk will win because he has the size advantage, right?
Would be one of those people.
Really?
Because as you've mentioned, Mark Zuckerberg has some jiu-jitsu experience, which is my new favorite quote from this entire thing. Which is totally just something that I wrote in, just to be clear. I don't think that's actually a thing from the thing, just to be clear. We're not... Zuckerberg has more than some jiu-jitsu experience, so does Elon Musk, probably. But if we're just talking about what we know, Mark Zuckerberg is the younger guy, but he's also 5'8" and 150 pounds, according to what I'm reading right now. And Elon Musk is 6'1", 215. And in fighting, when it comes to MMA, size is such a huge thing. And there's a reason there's weight classes, obviously, and all that. And you could go on about that forever. But the thing is, some part of me thinks that just because of that is the reason that Elon Musk is going to win. But at the same time, we're not talking about two professional MMA fighters. We're talking about two billionaires who sit on their ass for a living and do stuff. I don't even know what to say they do. But other than run their companies. We're talking about two guys. Mark Zuckerberg, obviously competes in jiu-jitsu tournaments, but is that going to be enough for him to grab a leg on Elon Musk and get a leg bar or arm bar, or something? Is he going to be able to pull that off, or is he going to just get sat on by a 215-pound Elon Musk?
Yeah, I think it depends how much he actually cares. Musk, that is. Like, if Musk trains at least
Well,
even a little
yeah,
bit,
well,
even a little bit, he's gonna like. I think he'll win.
Yeah.
Because like otherwise, Zuckerberg.
Yeah. And I'm.
In the current state, I think Zuckerberg could take him out, right? Because
You
like,
think? Wait, I'm sorry. You cut out a little bit there. Did you say you think he'll win, or do you think you don't think he's gonna win?
I think if Musk trains even a little bit, like if he preps for this, I think he'll win. But if it like happened today, I think Zuckerberg would win, just because like he has that experience, that fighting experience. Like he's actually genuinely pretty decent, and Musk has the size advantage. But when you are that far behind in terms of like how much fighting experience you have, I feel like that's a little bit too much to overcome. But Musk definitely has like the genetic advantage. I can't believe I'm saying that about Elon Musk.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing with Musk is the fact that you mentioned training and how important that is, and how serious Elon Musk takes this is going to determine how it turns out, which I kind of agree with. There's already talks about him teaming up with George St. Pierre, who's arguably the greatest UFC fighter of all time, depending on who you ask. If you ask me, I'd say that. And but that's taken away step. You know what? I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm just gonna piss people off. But anyway, GSP, who is an absolute beast in the cage. If he can learn 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of what GSP can teach him, maybe maybe he can do something. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Simon, are you gonna watch?
Yes, absolutely. Are you seriously asking me if I would if two billionaires are gonna get into the ring and beat the crap out of each other? You've got me sold. It's gonna be two fat dudes swinging, and they're both billionaires, and they're both. I love the entire thing. While I do not think it is the biggest fight ever, I feel like that is an insult.
I ain't paying for that.
You ain't paying for that?
Nah.
I think calling it the biggest fight ever is an insult to the entire sport. I would watch though. I would definitely watch.
I will
just
wait
to see.
until the clip of one of them knocking out the other appears on Instagram, Twitter, what have you. But I have better ways to spend.
So you're saying right now, Caleb Peterson prediction thinks that there will be a knockout. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm taking that back.
You heard it. You heard it here first. Caleb Peterson declares that there will be a knockout in the billionaire brawl.
I declare nothing. I declare that the billionaire brawl will probably end very sadly and very. Musk will
It'll be two
trip
dudes
on
dancing around each other for 25 minutes.
Musk will trip and fall on his ass and break his tailbone or something and have to be carted out of there. I don't know, man. It's so stupid. I will, if this actually happens, I will enjoy greatly finding something else to do. I don't.
It'll be a 5-round draw.
Yeah, these billionaires don't need any more attention than they already have. They can go to hell.
How much money do you think they're gonna make off this?
Too much.
Ugh.
I'm not giving any of my money to those people. No, thank you.
I do not blame you. But personally, the idea of seeing Elon Musk punch Mark Zuckerberg in the face, or the other way around, or what have you, is the funniest thing since I don't even know. So I can tell you right now, I will be watching.
This feels like the Logan Paul versus KSI of the 2020s.
It is. It absolutely is, and that's the funny thing, because Dana White, who is the UFC president, for anybody who wouldn't know, has been like criticizing celebrity boxing for as long as I can remember. And then all of a sudden he has the opportunity to put two billionaires in a ring who have zero training in anything. Like, it's not even like they've been boxing. It's not like they've been doing anything. Well, Mark Zuckerberg, jiu-jitsu. I feel like I have to throw that after every claim I make. But, so he obviously is okay at it. Or good, or what have you. But you're putting two guys with next to no experience. It's just like, another example, throw it on Dana White kind of being a hypocrite in certain things. I mean, I'm going to be really interesting to see how many people buy it. I think that's going to be super interesting to me. Probably the most interesting thing about the entire thing.
Yeah, I think people will, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah.
Yeah. Cuz it's for me like I don't know. It's like the Logan Paul KSI fight if both of them were Logan Paul. I just want them both to lose. It's just like this is depressing. It's funny, but it's depressing. I'm not what has this world come to?
I agree. Oh yeah. Yep, I agree. It's depressing, but then again, I want to see a billionaire knock the other billionaire out just because. So
that's true.
We can end this one off just by quickly saying I will be attending. Caleb will be putting all his money on a knockout, and that's all that needs to be said. With the draft now behind us, we're going to take a look at a couple of the trades that happened before the draft and what they could potentially mean for all the teams involved. And just for a little bit of a note, we're recording this basically, I believe, 10 minutes before the draft is supposed to start, which isn't exactly great planning on our part, but hey, what can you do? We're going to start off with the Tyler Toffoli trade, sending him to the Devils for a prospect and a third-round pick. All of a sudden, I do not have his name on the screen. Sharon Govich, who I watched a couple highlights on because I didn't actually know of him too much prior to this trade, but holy crap, that guy is a cannon of a shot.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a cannon of a shot, but I don't know. I've made my opinion on this trade known to you, Simon. I think this is quite, as a Flames fan, this is very disappointing in terms of Craig Conroy's first move as GM. Toffoli had a career year last year. I'd say, you can maybe debate this, but I think he was the best player on the team last year. He was the only one who played above expectations. Huberdeau sucked. Lindholm, extremely disappointing. Toffoli had such a huge bounce back year from the year before that, where he was disappointing after being traded here from Montreal. And I just don't know how you can't leverage that kind of a season into getting a better return. Because Sharon Govich, I think, is good. He has potential. He had a breakout season last year. But I don't know if that's worth Toffoli. Because I understand that you're trying to get younger. I understand the need to try to accrue draft capital. But I just don't understand how you can't get more.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you. Trading Toffoli for that type of return after you got him for a first-round pick definitely isn't the best. But I don't know if I agree with you on the fact that it makes Conroy look bad. Because I don't know if you can necessarily blame him for it. I think that it's just the fact that Toffoli is on an expiring contract. It's hard to move players on expiring contracts. We've seen that all over the league. Especially when you can't guarantee, Tyler Toffoli's obviously a UFA, you can't guarantee that your team's going to be getting him back the next year. Obviously, it's not easy to move a player like that. And I think, honestly, the difference between a third-round pick and a first for the Flames would have probably been whether you're trading him now or whether you were trading them at the trade deadline, which obviously Conroy wasn't the general manager back then. So, again, another list of things you can probably blame Brad Treliving for. But if all things considered, I feel like the smartest move of all would have been moving Toffoli back then, but since we don't have a time machine, I'm not necessarily mad about the return. I do like Sharon Govich from what I've seen of the few. I'll watch more on him and try and learn a bit more about him as a player. But the Flames, one of the Flames' biggest holes in the last decade, or even ever since Agidla left, arguably, has been right wing. And we've seen them really struggle to fill that hole since I guess you could say Yuri Hudler was a pretty good right winger for us. But other than that, it's pretty hard to name any that we've had. So, seeing them trade for a young guy with like I said, cannon of a shot. Hopefully, you throw him out there with Huberdeau, even though obviously he's not that good yet. Maybe later in the year when he's earned it. But if you throw him out there with a playmaker like Huberdeau, we could potentially see him maybe not having a career year, putting a couple more in the back of the net. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like Flames trades nowadays are always you always come out of it with that kind of attitude. Hopefully this person will turn into something. Hopefully this will turn out a little bit better. I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of treading water. Um, it's really, are you going to essentially tank, and are you going to try to rebuild, or are you going to try to contend? And I think the Flames are in the worst possible spot. I think the worst spot you can be in the standings is exactly where they were, 17th overall in the league, because you're not getting a good draft pick, you're not getting good capital for building a contender in the future, and you miss the playoffs. You don't have a chance to contend. It's teams like all of these teams that are just sort of mediocre. Those are the teams that struggle. You look at teams like Colorado. They built their team by intent, like they were bad. They were awful, last in league. They get Nathan McKinnon, and they start building a young team around him. That's how they won Stanley Cups. Same thing with a bunch of other teams, right? Like Carolina, bad for many years. Toronto was bad for a while. Like the Kings were bad for like picking Quentin Byfield #2, and now they're back in the playoffs, and they are making moves of their own, which we'll talk about later. I just don't think Sharon Govich could be good, but at the same time, I'd rather just go in for a higher upside prospect, which I completely agree. We should have traded him at the trade deadline. That was a bad move by Tree Living, and Conroy was kind of left in a little bit of a predicament in terms of what to do with Toffoli. But I don't know. This just leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, knowing that we had such a valuable asset in Toffoli, and we essentially got nothing for him. That's what kind of sours it, right? And you do, to kind of leave on a different note. Now, it's maybe not as good to use this as an example because it didn't work out for us. But the last time we had a player who had like a career year on an expiring contract was Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
And while obviously that trade didn't work out for us, the return was still amazing. Like Huberdeau and Uyghur at the time are still extremely valuable pieces. I think
the hardest thing with comparing those
Tkachuk.
two things, though, is the fact that Tkachuk was, I believe, 115-point scorer, and when you compare that to a 70-point scorer, obviously the returns could be very diminished. And obviously,
no, I'm not saying that you're gonna get Huberdeau and Uyghur for Toffoli. Obviously not. But like just something better than this. This feels like you're getting nothing. Like what is the third round pick? Probably nothing. Sharon Govich, he could be good like every other player the Flames have traded for, but I can also see him being disappointing, flaming out of the league, and being on the Wranglers in a couple years. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I'll counter that with another question. What do you think would have been the best possible return we could have gotten? Like, keep in mind, you're still trading him now. This is not trade deadline. This is not prior. This is now. In a situation where you're not necessarily looking at anybody who's trading for Tyler Toffoli isn't looking at a guy who they're looking at someone who could potentially leave. This isn't a situation where he's probably going to sign an extension right now after the trade. What do you think is the best thing you could have done?
Yeah. I think for Toffoli, I would have much rather, because obviously you gave up a first round pick. So that's kind of the bar. Are you going to hit that bar? Probably not, because of when you're trading him. But if you could manage to get a late first round pick from a team like the Devils by, I don't know, including Toffoli and a later round pick, let's say you trade Toffoli and like a fourth for the Devils' first round pick. That would sit a lot better with me than getting Sharon Govich in a third. I don't know how likely that is. I don't know how much the Devils want to hold on to that, but I feel like some team is going to take that, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. For the issue is you're seeing it's sure he's coming off a career year, but he hasn't really had a year prior to that where he hit that 70-point, 34-goal area.
Yeah,
right?
but
so you're not trading a team that's trying to pick up Toffoli. I don't think they're necessarily looking at it as they're trading for someone who is going to give them 35 goals next year. I think they're looking at it as a guy who, like you said, you're talking about coulds here, even on the Flames side, could give you 35 goals, and that's why it gets a little more flimsy. I don't know if teams would give up a first. I think that'd be awesome.
It's different. It's different because we already did, though, right? It's different because we already did. His value was already a first-round pick.
But then again,
the only reason it's watered down,
we're trying to contend, right? So it's just it's tough.
Yes. The only reason it's watered down is the timing of it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if you're just talking about the player, like, ignore the timing of it for a second. You're just talking about the player. He has already proven that he is worth a first-round pick. He's already proven that he's worth a first-round pick. Because he exceeded expectations when he was already valued at a first-round pick by the Flames. So, again, I get that they are trading a free agent. It's essentially just a deal to get the rights for him. But at the same time, I don't know. It just feels like so much less of a return than we could have gotten, right?
Yeah, for sure. And keeping in mind, now we know what we did get for him. We got Sharon Govich and a third round pick. Would you have rather waited until the next trade deadline and maybe trade him to a contender, knowing that he was probably going to leave into free agency after that season? Would you have rather waited to see what you might get then?
Yeah, I would have. I think the market is a little bit more competitive at that point because right now you're dealing with teams that have their entire roster in front of them, right? The Devils, they can roll out their ideal perfect lineup to fully slot it in, first line, second line, I don't know where he's going to play. But look at that after the trade deadline. Say, I don't know, Timo Meier gets hurt and he's out for like the rest of the season. That's when a team like New Jersey gets more desperate. Let's say that they're already like second in the division. That's when they get more desperate. That's when they're willing to give up more for Toffoli. That's
I definitely
do it at that time.
I definitely agree with you. I think it's, although at the same time, obviously, I don't think the Flames could have done that. I think Tyler Toffoli had kind of told them that requested a trade, didn't want to be on the team next year. It is what it is. Obviously, they could have said no.
Why?
But...
Did you see why?
I think I did, but I don't remember.
He wanted to re-sign,
right,
but essentially the Flames were the ones that weren't interested. So he decided that he needed to move on.
I don't think that weren't interested was the right way. I think it's just that nothing had happened yet. I think that's what I remember.
I'll see if I can pull the quote because he talked about it.
Yeah, what I remember hearing was that he wanted to have that contract talk right now, obviously, but the Flames weren't really engaging in that. They didn't really want it right now. Obviously, when you're bringing in a new general manager and all these different things are happening, I think the Flames were kind of hoping they'd see a little bit more patience from Tyler Toffoli. That's me putting in words into the whole. That's my thought on the whole situation, not the truth, not the facts, obviously. But I think that if Tyler Toffoli really wanted to stay in Calgary, he probably would have just had to wait. And I can't imagine the Flames wouldn't have signed him, right? I can't imagine they would have just let him walk. So, although, I said, I'm not necessarily I don't hate the return either. So,
yeah, I'm a little bit more of a hater on the return. I have the quote here from Toffoli. It basically sounds like yeah, maybe he would have gotten an extension in the future, in the next year or so, but he felt like it wasn't coming. So here is... God, my internet's slow. Just looking at that tweet, the little swirly bar. Okay. He said, I was waiting for an extension conversation and there was none coming, and it didn't feel like there was one in the future. It didn't sound like there was any sort of need for me or want in a way, so it was a personal decision. I thought it was time for myself and my wife to experience something different and move forward. That sounds like a lack of interest on the team side.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if I necessarily blame the Flames for that either. We're a team, or their team currently, that's looking at not really looking at contending necessarily in the next year or two. A guy like Toffoli, obviously you could trade him for a prospect. We did trade him for a prospect and a pick. I mean, I feel like this is a situation. Obviously, the Flames gave up. If the Flames hadn't given up a first for him in the first place, I feel like people wouldn't be hating this trade as much. Sure, you could still have gotten more, but at that point,
Yeah.
I
don't
feel
know.
like
Even
take
even
that
without
first
the
out of
first.
even without the first,
Even
you still
without
think
that,
this is too
though?
less? Too little?
Yeah. Even without that, you're getting like the third round pick. How much is that going to matter? Sure, it's good you're getting draft capital, but 80% chance that it's going to be a player who never sees a minute of playing time for your team.
Sure.
If you take it straight up, Toffoli for Sharangovich, it's not equal. Like, not at all.
And of course, I agree with you there. I would never in my wildest dreams try and say that that is equal. I think that, and I'm
because,
not.
too,
I'm saying that it's as much as I think you would have gotten.
but remember this, too, that Sharangovich was also on an expiring deal. Because we just signed him to a 2-year,
Sure.
it was a decent deal. 2-year, something, not too crazy.
I like that contract.
I didn't mind that deal. But, like, they're both players with expiring contracts. They're both in the same situation. I'd straight up swap for each other a little bit more on the Devil's side. Like, it's just not even at all. I think the Flames could have got more, and they should have gotten more. And it's not a great start to the Conroy era. I know we want to move into some of these other trades.
I was gonna
want to get your before we move on from this. What is your overall thoughts on the new regime in Calgary? Because I do have some thoughts about that.
Oh, okay.
Are you confident in Craig Conroy's ability?
I will definitely say that we have not seen enough. I like Craig Conroy. I've met Craig Conroy a couple times. He's an awesome guy. But obviously, awesome people does not necessarily mean awesome general manager. And we're going to have to see what that really looks like in the next little bit. This first trade obviously doesn't look the best. I don't think he was in a good position. You know what I mean? And I've already mentioned that. I think he was kind of forced into this one. I don't know if it's a good reason to instantly just start throwing everything up in the air and saying he's a terrible general manager. I don't think you can say that just yet. Maybe wait and see what happens in the draft. Obviously, we'll see what happens in the draft. You'll know what's happened in the draft. And maybe another trade, who knows? I'm saying patience is my answer. I don't know yet. I love that back.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't met Craig Conroy, but he did, and there was an event I went to, there, you get to meet a couple of Flames players. I met Mark Giordano, and he was the host, and yeah, like, super nice guy from everything that I've seen. Like, he seems awesome. And obviously I love that Iginla's back too. However, the one thing that I'm worried about is, I was talking to my dad about this, who was an Oilers fan, and he was like, this seems very similar to what the Oilers did back when they had a bunch of former 80s Oilers in their front office, right? Like, they had Kevin Lowe in some sort of high position. I think they had Messier as well. It's this kind of idea of you just, like, rebuilding, trying to attain that former
It's the boys' club.
It's the boys' club. The former glory of these past Stanley Cup teams by putting them in higher positions.
Penguins are another example of that.
Yeah. I just feel like that never works out.
I think the biggest difference, though, is Conroy's been the assistant general manager for the Flames for
this is true.
10 years
That's
now.
true. He does have the experience.
It's not like he didn't deserve it, right? Like, he worked his way up. It's not like he was gifted this because his name is Craig Conroy. I think that's the only argument I have against that. I don't disagree that it looks like a boys' club and probably is a boys' club, but, like, I mean, of all of them that have happened, I'd argue Craig Conroy probably has the most credentials, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just optimistic. Who knows?
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, we need to have a little bit of patience. Obviously, he needs to prove himself a little bit, but yeah, it's my one, like, worry about it going into it. It's just that there's a pattern of hires that kind of seem like they're building towards that same kind of boys' club that you know Oilers and Penguins have had and have not worked out well for them. Because I feel like that just kind of leads to the same, what I was talking about before. This just constant mediocrity and never getting anywhere like we've been in for the last, like, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, speedrun time. What are your thoughts on the Taylor Hall Nick Foligno moving over to Chicago, giving them some veteran wingers to play with Bedard when he gets drafted there. Obviously, it'll already have happened. I'm talking. I don't know yet. Maybe they'll take frickin'. I didn't say frickin'. Bleep that out. But you know what I mean. What are your thoughts on it?
I thought this was weird. I thought this was really weird. I don't know if I'm missing something. I just don't understand why Taylor Hall is going to Chicago. Chicago does not seem like the team that should be trading for anybody right now. I guess I guess they want to, like, it'll help Bedard. It'll help Bedard to have someone like Hall, which is probably the thinking behind it. It does seem a little bit weird that they're buying, at least in this one move.
Well, I don't think we're going to see more of them buying. I think it's just going to be the one. They're just trying to bring in a veteran guy. I think it's also, maybe there's a little bit there about bringing in a former first overall pick who can maybe give Bedard a little bit more guidance on dealing with the pressure, dealing with all of the mental parts that come with those types of expectations. Obviously, for Hall, he had a lot of hype behind him too. I feel like there's something there about that, but there's also something there about just immediately putting Bedard on a line with a guy who is a former MVP, has been there, done that, and kind of give him a guy who can maybe help him, figure it out in his first year in the league.
Yeah. It's kind of them addressing the worry that I had about Chicago drafting Bedard in the first place, is that I feel like they're drafting Bedard a couple years too early, if you know what I mean. Like, that's why I would have been more, not necessarily excited because they're in their division, but it would have felt like more of a good fit for him to go to Anaheim, because Anaheim feels like they have pieces already. They have Zegras, they have Troy Terry, they have John Gibson, maybe not for much longer, but they have him as of
Probably
now.
Not.
But, like, Chicago has nothing. Chicago has literally nothing. And so it just feels like Bedard with, like, a barren wasteland of nobody around him. Which is, again, why they got Hall. But it just feels like you need a couple more of those young pieces before you get, like, the young superstar, right? That's what's going to kind of make building the Blackhawks back a little bit difficult, I think.
And I don't think they're necessarily looking at it as bringing in Bedard is instantly going to turn the team around, because obviously it's not. And I've heard stuff, everybody's arguing about how many points Bedard's going to have in his first year, how good is he, yada, 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 yada. Obviously, with anything, it's impossible to know. Like, for all we know, he could have a 40-point rookie year, kind of have a down year, and then his second year have 120. Because that's just how these things are, right? That's the first year, always take it with a grain of salt. That's kind of the way that I've always looked at it. Rookie seasons are tough. And I think even when there's especially when there's high expectations, and if you're Chicago, I definitely don't think you're looking at it as this guy is going to be the thing next year. He's our superstar instantly. He is the guy who is going to rocket us to success. I think if he is a second-line center by the end of this year, that's a win for Chicago. Because it's just about developing the guy. And that's why, like I said, that's why you bring in vets. You got to bring in guys who are going to teach and show Bedard what it takes to be in the NHL. And Taylor Hall, he's been a star. He's been that guy for a lot of teams. Nick Foligno, he's captained a couple teams now. Maybe a couple is wrong. I know he was captain of Columbus. Yep, I think that's right.
I think he was, yeah.
I think that's right. Anyway, you bring in a guy who maybe can show off some leadership for Bedard. You're bringing in guys who are going to be able to show him what it takes to make it in the NHL, and hopefully increase the chance that while maybe at the end of this year he's a second-line center, make sure that his ceiling is never in a second-line center. Because obviously, if you're Chicago, when you're drafting him, like I said, first year, grain of salt. Second year, though, you want to see the Bedard that everybody is hoping is coming, and not, Lafreniere. Or Lafreniere, sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
The second time.
I think I completely agree. Like, I'm not expecting Bedard to, like, light the league on fire his first year. I think it could happen, but you can't have that expectation. But
you do? Frickin'.
I can't have no. You can't have that. I think it's possible.
Oh, okay.
I just think you can't expect.
I was gonna ask you,
like,
after that comment, what is your point prediction official? Putting it out there for the entire world What's your prediction? How many points is he gonna have?
That's tough. I'm gonna say.
I'm putting you on the spot here after you said that.
I'm gonna say 65 to 70 range.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 65 to 70 range. I think he's gonna be very good.
I agree. I think it's gonna be 70. That was my prediction, but I think there are a lot of people out there who, if Bedard gets 70 points in his rookie year, he is a bust. And I feel like that expectation is insane. Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers.
He's not gonna be prime Wayne Gretzky from his first
Well,
game.
the thing is, when people are doing that, they're comparing him to Connor McDavid. And true. Like, as a prospect, Connor McDavid and Bedard, they are comparable. And Connor McDavid went on to have, before he got hurt, a really incredible rookie season. I still don't think that that's fair. Because Connor McDavid is such a one-of-a-kind. Like, there's a reason he's just so athletically gifted in his skating and his everything, and he had that from the beginning, right? So, and while Bedard does have, toe drag release and all the memes, he does not necessarily have that incredible speed that McDavid has, or like any of the athletics or anything like that. I'm not saying that he's not incredibly gifted. I'm saying that, like, the athleticism that made McDavid so incredible straight from the get-go isn't necessarily there for Bedard, at least not to the same level. So I have a harder time saying instantly Bedard's going to go out there. And Bedard's also undersized. You have to realize that. Not a lot of people are talking about that, but he is.
Well, he's 18. Like, he's younger than us.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
That's the thing. That was the issue with Shane Wright last year, is that he's an 18, 19-year-old kid going into a league full of, like, 28, 29, 30, up to, like, 40-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
You are not physically the same as, like, everybody else.
Not.
You are undersized just because you're not old enough. Like,
and that was the difference that made McDavid so crazy, is because he made all of these 25-year-olds in their prime look like they were 40, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing that made, like, and he was doing that since he was 18. And the thing is, you cannot look at me and tell me that Bedard has that same skating ability. Even if he has the shot, we'll still have to see if he can instantly turn that. Because the thing is, you can have as incredible of a shot, incredible puck skills, all that. But the NHL is just different. Because you have to be, at a certain point, it's less how good of a shot you is and more when you know how to use it and all that. You know what I mean? Like, hockey IQ is so much more important, in my opinion. And we're going to have to see, obviously, people have talked about how smart of a player Bedard is. We're going to have to see if he can transition that into the NHL and how quickly he can do that. But that's why I kind of have a hard time. I think he'll succeed, just to be clear. I'm throwing everything that I think of when I think of that stuff on the table. I think that these are the things that you should be talking about, but I do think he will overcome.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think it's gonna be a learning curve just because it has to be. Like, McDavid had a unique skill set that made him uniquely prepared to play in a league full of people bigger and stronger than him. Even then, he still got hurt his first year and missed half the season. It happens. It's just not a league built for these younger players yet. There's a reason that 90% of the names you're going to hear announced in the next couple hours are not going to see any playing time with their teams until 3 years from now. This is not the NFL where you're drafting kids out of college. You're drafting kids out of high school. And that there's a big difference in that. Like, huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is, obviously, you just mentioned that McDavid got hurt, and McDavid was 6'1" out of his rookie season, right? He's still a tall guy. Mm-hmm. Like, at least, to me. And, he's still tall by most people's standards. Bedard is, I'm currently looking this up. Bedard is, I believe, 5'10", which 3 inches, what's that, obviously, when it comes to height? Are you really... I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. When I see somebody who's 5'10" going into the NHL at 18, my immediate instinct is that obviously there's a little bit of fear there. We've seen smaller guys now succeed with Cole Caulfield, Johnny Gaudreau, that kind of thing. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau took a little bit more time for him to get there, but we've seen young, smaller guys succeed now, but it's still, there's obviously still the scare there, as you mentioned, or the fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, definitely. Speaking of young players, although maybe not as young anymore, do you want to talk about the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to kind of
Probably should. We probably should, yeah. Gonna be a 2-hour podcast. Everybody get strapped in. You're gonna be here for a while.
Oh yeah, and we've just hit one sport so far. You ain't seen nothing yet.
You ain't seen nothing. Okay.
But well, yeah, what are your initial thoughts on the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade?
I really like
it. Maybe just start with your thoughts on Dubois as a player. What he brings to Los Angeles.
I cannot say I've watched a lot of Dubois, obviously, because I can't say I've watched a lot of Jets games. But personally, I've always liked. What I know of him is he's a fairly defensive forward. He's a defensive forward. He's a guy who can really has that good 200-foot game. He's really good in anywhere on the ice. He's one of those reliable players, and I've always liked those kinds of guys, and I personally love it for the Kings because they're bringing in another center who can probably be. Right now, he's probably a second-line center. He can be a first-line center if he hits that. He still has some potential that he hasn't shown yet. I really like it for them. I like it for Winnipeg as well. Obviously, they got Gabriel Villardi, who a lot of people are arguing is just as good as Dubois. Which is interesting to me because I don't agree. Yeah. But
He's
I mean,
young.
I like it for both sides. He's young, yeah. I like it for both sides. Definitely. I think it's a pretty even trade. Definitely the most even out of the three.
I'd agree. And to kind of touch on the Toffoli stuff, to look at the return that Dubois got.
The biggest difference is Dubois is 24, though. That's the immediate counter I'm going to throw out there.
No. That's true. But it's the same kind of thing. It's even more so to where Dubois. We've known for a year that Dubois was not signing in Winnipeg. That's the other difference too that you can throw. Toffoli, it was up in the air. It was more like the last week or so that it got out that maybe he's not returning. Dubois has been yeah, I'm in freaking Winnipeg. Nobody wants to be here. I want out. And so I don't know. Just looking at that move to Toffoli, I'm just I wish I could have had that similar return because I think the return that they got was really good.
The funny thing is, and I don't remember which player the Winnipeg got that said this, but one of them came out and said that he's happy he's going to Winnipeg because they don't really have hockey fans in LA. That's what
I saw that.
I can't remember which one said that, but
was it iFollow? I feel like it might have been iFollow.
Maybe. But I feel like that's kind of the interesting thing there with obviously nobody wants to necessarily go to Winnipeg. I feel bad saying that, but I mean, it is still a hockey city, and if that's what's important to you, then you're gonna succeed in Winnipeg. You're gonna succeed in a Canadian city, right? But if you like warm weather and beaches, you're not gonna like Winnipeg as much. And obviously, we're kind of Pierre-Luc Dubois might be a beach guy. That's what we're learning.
I think he might be. Which I think is fair, and I think.
Oh, I'm nothing wrong with beaches.
Nothing wrong with beach guy. Nothing wrong with not wanting to live in Winnipeg. I think that's very fair. But
nothing wrong with either.
Oh no, not at all. But I think for the Kings, this is kind of the perfect move for them too, right? Because they are the exact kind of team that should be buying players like Dubois now, right? It's the same kind of that's kind of you can see the two parallels between this Calgary, New Jersey trade and this Winnipeg, LA trade. New Jersey and LA are on the upswing. They've been bad for a while. They've got the young talent. Now is their time to buy. They are getting these players. They're getting Toffoli. They're getting Dubois. They're getting these players that are going to get them over the hump of the first, second round and start to actually contend for a Stanley Cup if all goes right. Whereas Winnipeg and Calgary are clearly on the downswing. They are going to be the bottom dwellers of the next 2 years because their championship window is slammed shut. Do they have some players still? Yeah, Winnipeg still made the playoffs. Calgary had more points in the regular season than the eventual Eastern Conference champion. But at the same time, you're looking at these teams were buoyed up by older veteran players like Huberdeau, Kadri, Lindholm, and the prospects that we have, while promising, are unproven. So that's kind of like I find the parallels really interesting between those two, and I think it's exactly the right kind of deal for. I think the Toffoli trade was the right kind of deal for New Jersey. I think Dubois is perfect for LA. I think the Jets got as much as they could. I think Calgary could have got more. Out of all of those teams, I think Calgary is the one that I'm most disappointed about. Which I think could be biased because I'm looking at it from a fan perspective. But
yeah, for sure. And I guess since obviously we've been talking about this for 36 minutes, I say I'm going to end it off with a question. How good, which team do you, well, you know what, actually, I know the answer to that personally, but how good do you think LA is going to be next year? Do you see them as winning the Pacific, or do you see them as maybe just being a upper tier playoff team, or maybe making the wild card? What are you seeing from this team?
I don't see them winning the Pacific because they have a lot of competition. They have competition in Edmonton. They have competition in Las Vegas. I think either of those teams is probably going to take the division. However, in LA, if your prospects keep developing, if Quinn Byfield turns into what a second overall pick should be, then you've got a young, promising team that can make a run for it. They took I forget how long I'm pretty sure they took the Oilers to 6, and there was a few, like the Oilers had that giant comeback. They could have beaten Edmonton. If they have Dubois and you play that series again, they beat Edmonton, right? It's building a team that's built to succeed in the playoffs, right? And that's kind of the difference. I think they'll do better than they did last year. Do I see them winning the Pacific? I think there are teams that are better, but do I think they have the opportunity to maybe finish second in the Pacific and then kind of make a run for it, win a round or two? Yeah, I think they do. I think they maybe got a year or two until they peak, but it's definitely the start of something special in LA.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think that, honestly, this is probably three trades where there's not necessarily a huge loser, other than maybe Calgary, depending on where you land on that. But anyway, I think this is kind of every team is sort of winning a little. Everybody's kind of getting what they need. And obviously, like I said, the draft will have already happened. And we'll see what happens with that. But as of right now, these are probably the three biggest trades to happen. Obviously, there was Montreal getting Newhook. And I'm sure we could talk another 20 minutes about that, but probably end it with hockey here. Anyway.
Shout out Ivan Barbashev for the 5-year extension. You go get that bag.
Damn right. So last week we're a little late on this one, but the Hockey Hall of Fame announced its 2023 inductees, and while there was a couple names that I was happy to see, personally, I wanted Henrik Lundqvist to get in there. Mike Vernon was a surprise for me personally, but it's still awesome to see. Ken Hitchcock, another one that's awesome to see. But there's also quite a few guys who were left off that were pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, it's true. Going down the list, a few of them that were surprising to me that they weren't already in. Theo Fleury, Jeremy Roenick, Keith Tkachuk, and then... Well,
Theo Fleury's been a controversial one for a while. Keith Tkachuk,
in terms of...
Like, there are quite a few names in there. Like, you can go on and on.
It's true. I mean, Theo Fleury, obviously, with him off the ice as of recently, maybe warrants a little bit of hesitation. But for his playing career, at least as a Flames fan, you definitely kind of look at that and think, like, hey, if Mike Vernon got in, maybe Fleury can get in a little bit later down the line. But overall, it is a good class. I think everybody in there is definitely deserving of it, right? It's the Lundqvist was the obvious first ballot Hall of Fame type guy. Vernon is it's surprising but glad that he got in. Underrated goalie from Calgary's heyday, because people forget that just because of how good the Oilers were, the Flames were like almost as good, because they provided the rivalry for them in the 80s, and Vernon was their goalie that entire time, right? Some very good Flames teams in the 80s. And yeah, Ken Hitchcock, obviously, all of the great success that he's had as a coach. You'd love to see a guy like him get into the Hall.
Yeah, for sure. It's always great to see when coaches like that get in, when they're just obviously Ken Hitchcock. He had over 1,500 games coached in the NHL. He has a Stanley Cup victory with the Dallas Stars, and right now I sound like I'm just reading off his Wikipedia, but obviously a guy who really, really deserves it. There's a lot, like you said, everybody on here first ballot in almost every single case here. I don't know why I even said almost. And the funny thing is it's the thing that's always stuck out to me whenever this time always comes around every year where they announce who's going in. It almost feels like they should be letting in more people per year, because there's so many guys who also deserve to be first ballot, right? Because another name, Curtis Joseph, Zetterberg. Like, there's so many guys on there that are just. It's interesting to me how they didn't get in as well. Like, to me, I personally feel like Zetterberg, for example, that's the big one, stuck out to me over everyone else. He probably deserves to get in there too.
Yeah, I definitely think he does. And I agree with that in terms of how small the Hockey Hall of Fame classes are in comparison to other sports. I know the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I'm pretty sure, does more players per year. I don't know about basketball. The only sport that may be more restrictive is baseball, but they've got their own weird, terrible system where sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't even get anybody in the Hall of Fame, right? Like it. So at least we're better than that, but it does seem like a little bit of a small class, because there's lots of players that you think are deserving and feel like they deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame, but just aren't. I think it's interesting now, for me at least, because we're starting to get into the era. It's with Lundqvist now, and then like Iginla last year, where it's players that I grew up watching, and I think that's what makes this interesting. Which is weird. It makes you feel old, right? Like it's
a little.
It's weird to.
But it's always nice.
Yeah, like Zetterberg especially.
Like Lundqvist deserved that.
Or not Zetterberg. Lundqvist especially. Like he was still playing not that long ago, right? It feels weird that he's in the Hall of Fame. That absolutely deserving.
It is
absolutely deserving.
Yeah. Yeah, and if anybody deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer for goaltending, it's Lundqvist. He's one of those guys who, for close to 2 decades, was one of the most solid goaltenders in the NHL. That Stanley Cup evaded him, but
it wasn't his fault.
I don't think
wasn't
that's
his fault.
It was not his fault. Yeah, that's true. He's one of those guys who really does deserve to get in. And so does everybody on here. There's a lot of. When I look at all these names, I can't see a single one I disagree with.
I agree.
And that's one of those things. There's always so many people who can get.
It's true.
Or who deserve.
It's true. Speaking of, so Lundqvist, obviously the only first year eligible that eventually got in. Simon, I'm going to read you off some names of some other first year. This is players who it was their first year of eligibility, and you let me know if any of them you think will get in at some point in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. So let's start off.
Okay.
I'll just read them all off. We got Corey Crawford, Jay Bouwmeester, Justin Williams, Andrei Markov, Dustin Byfuglien, Brent Seabrook. Any of those you think will get in?
Williams and Bouwmeester are both kind of tough to me, because I don't necessarily feel like they. I guess Williams has a bit more of a resume with his kind of. He won a couple cups in there. He was pretty clutch in the finals. Bouwmeester, and this is coming again, both Flames fans here. I have a hard time saying Bouwmeester is a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's Hall of really good.
Yeah,
I'd say.
I'd agree.
Because he was always a very good defenseman on every team he played on. He played a big part in that St. Louis Cup. He was always a very, very serviceable defenseman his entire career, but he was never a standout guy for any team he was on. Which is why, I don't fully believe that type of consistency is what. If you put Bouwmeester in there, that opens the gates for.
I'd agree.
1,000 other consistent defensemen who had 15-year careers who also would deserve to get in, right? So I have a hard time with him. But Williams, you wouldn't hear me angry about that. But I personally no. But I wouldn't be mad about it. I'd understand. And like, I'm trying to remember the names you mentioned.
Yeah.
Crawford, I agree with. Goaltender won a cup, deserves it. Corey Crawford, 100%. Brent Seabrook, that's another tough one to me. I don't know if I necessarily would say. No, I don't think so. I don't know if I'd put Seabrook in there. He's another guy who's Hall of really good. For almost the exact same thing I said for Bouwmeester, I think.
Yeah.
Because, again, another pretty solid defensive defenseman. One of those guys, but once again, Hall of pretty good. And who else did you say in there?
Byfuglien, yeah.
Byfuglien's so hard for me.
Yeah.
Because when I think of Byfuglien, I think of, like, flashy big hits.
Yeah.
Like, just tank of a shot, like one of those guys. But, like, did he really do anything that deserves to put him in the Hall? And that's where I kind of have a...
I think for him, it's longevity is the issue. Because he flamed out really fast. I feel like I had this I had this conversation with somebody where I was just like, where did he go? He was like one of the top defensemen, and then he retired young. And then he just disappeared. I think that's the biggest thing that like maybe like if he had done what a lot of other players do and just kind of like ring chase the last couple of years of his career and win another Stanley Cup, maybe he's
just let himself fizzle.
Yeah, maybe he would be like he'd pile up some more stats, he'd have another Stanley Cup to his resume, maybe have another like Erik Karlsson resurgence type year. Like I think maybe then you'd be in the conversation, but as of now I think it's tough. He played at the level, I think, where you could say hockey elephant. Like for me, my
just not long enough.
Yes, I agree. I think for me, the way I'm looking at it, at least for the players that I've watched, it's like, were these players like one of the top like 25? Like if you were like, oh, name NHL players, would they be among the first 25 you'd name? That's where I kind of be like
right now.
Yeah. So like,
yeah.
If you're thinking of it right now, like which kind of players would you name? It's like, oh, Connor McDavid, like he's gonna be in there someday. Like Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, they're gonna be in there someday. It's just like, who do you think of immediately? Because those guys are.
Did we miss anybody? Who else did you name there? Could have got in first year.
The one that I missed, Andrei Markov. I don't know too much about him.
Right. Okay.
He spent 16 seasons in Montreal.
Yeah, I was gonna say. You know what's the funny thing? Another really, really good defensive defenseman, and I mean.
These guys all, I really agree with your like assessment. Like Hall of really good. Like there's really no shame to any of these players because they had like excellent NHL careers. Like they were awesome.
Which I feel so weird. I feel really weird saying no to Markov because I would put him a tier above Bouwmeester, I think, but still, I don't know if I'd. No. He's still not Hall of Fame to me because I can't think of what he did in his career that like puts him on another level. You know what I mean? Because I think a Hall of Fame player, like you said, I don't know if I definitely agree with your sentiment of if you can think of them in the first 25 players you can name. I think that's definitely a very good way to look at it. I also think like a Hall of Famer should just be someone who, when you think of them, it shouldn't be controversial.
Yeah.
It should be someone who goes, yeah, that guy, he's in there.
Yeah.
Right? Like it shouldn't be a guy where I have to sit here and go, I don't know. Like that feels weird to me. I don't know if that's just as a whole. And it doesn't
especially
I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me.
Especially when there's so many players that aren't in that you could go right now and be like, that's a Hall of Famer. Henrik Zetterberg.
Because if we're talking just playing career without like any of the politics, any of the thousands of things that happened prior, Theo Fleury,
Hall of Fame.
Anybody you just mentioned.
Yeah,
but he also had his. I don't know. You could, if we go down that rabbit hole with Theo Fleury, we're gonna be talking for 45 minutes about whether somebody's off ice life should impact their resume as a player.
And it's also tough for him because a lot of it was...
It's the Barry Bonds. It's the Barry Bonds argument.
And a lot of it for Fleury was after he left hockey. Like, most of his... I think he was also the reason he left, though. That's also true. That's also true. I know in terms of like his political stuff that really went off the rails like recently. He's always been troubled.
That's not even what I'm talking about though, because like obviously political beliefs should not impact a Hall of Fame.
No, but more like he's conspiracy and he's gone. And no, I know I read his book, which I found. I'm gonna drop a hockey book at multiple points, or hockey or football book multiple points at this podcast. But yeah, like I read his book. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
It's
on my list.
It's really good. It's really good. You do gain an appreciation for all that he's been through. Like his life was rough. Like he's been through some awful stuff. So you almost have to take that into consideration. We don't need to get into it on that. Yeah, obviously not.
Look it up.
Obviously, but, like read the book if you can. Like I can recommend the book if you're interested. But you do have to take that into consideration too, right? Like situationally. It's very interesting. It definitely makes for one of the more complicated cases for whether a player should get in or not.
Yeah, for sure. And there's not a lot of those in hockey, I feel like. He's the big one. And the funny thing is, obviously, it's not his first year of being able to get in. It's been quite a while. He's always the one name that comes up every year that really, there's always a conversation about it, but he's another guy, if I'm being honest with you, I don't know if I see him getting in the Hall of Fame. Playing career-wise, I think he deserves it. I think he did more than enough to get in. But I think that there's so many different things there that like stick out to me that really make it hard for me to induct him. And I think the NHL sees it that way too, and that's why he's not already in there. So maybe if like down the road there's like something changes, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But just looking at it, like the situation we currently have, I don't see him getting in.
Yeah, I could agree.
It's the same thing with Barry Bonds.
I think he'll get in. I think Barry Bonds is harder, because Barry Bonds faces.
You think so?
Just because of the system that I think Barry Bonds is a better player.
Oh,
but because of how baseball does their Hall of Fame, like it's going to be nearly impossible because of how much more unanimous it needs to be for someone to get in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds doesn't have it.
And Barry Bond will forever be a 50-50 guy.
Yes, he's like me personally. I think he should, but I can see the case where you're like, no, he shouldn't. Like it's one of those things.
If we want to go down,
it would take forever.
We can go down the Barry Bonds rabbit hole another time.
Yeah,
because I think we could probably have a conversation on that. I actually agree with you. I think he just played in an era that there was a lot of guys on steroids, so it's kind of hard. I don't want to say it cancels out, but it's, like, again, we can go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's
another time.
We definitely can. I think for to kind of wrap that up and connect it to what we were talking about before, it's because for baseball in the 2000s, Barry Bonds is like the name, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing.
The funny thing is, take the steroids out of the conversation. He's Gretzky.
Yeah.
It's probably the truth. Like, the dude hit more home runs than anybody, and he was just he was terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, he was Mike Tyson. Like, he was that guy.
He was, and
like,
I'll plug one of my favorite YouTube videos. It's by John Boys. If you don't know John Boys, awesome stuff. He made a video of how Barry Bonds would perform in one of his top seasons if he didn't have a bat. So the
I've seen that video. That's
it's great because it's the idea is the pitchers don't know that he doesn't have a bat, but he doesn't have a bat, so he can't swing at literally anything.
He's got a hologram.
He has a hologram bat, and he still is one of the best players in the league, by a considerable margin.
Because he was walked that much.
Which is insane. Yeah. It's insane. But yeah.
Again,
that's another rabbit hole that we can go down when we're actually talking about baseball.
We could spend 20 minutes talking about Barry Bonds and how incredible his baseball career is.
To wrap up that, Barry Bonds is very good. Watch the John Boy's video and any other John Boy's video if you can. Has so much cool stuff out there. But yeah.
Read Theo Fleury's book. Congrats to all the new Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Better luck next time to all the people who also deserve it.
This is true.
Yada yada yada.
Interesting to see who they'll get in next year, and I wonder who will be eligible next year. It's interesting to see because all of the players that we went through in terms of first year eligibility, like I've watched all of those players, so it'll be really interesting to see what this conversation is like when we talk again, like next year. So looking around, transitioning our focus to the NBA, I just have one thing to say. Who the hell is Tingus Pingus? I don't even know about fucking Latinia. Kristaps Porzingis has been traded to the Celtics after a couple of attempts from the Celtics to acquire him. They attempted a 3-team trade with the Clippers, and ultimately it fell through because Malcolm Brogdon had injury concerns, and after that it kind of looked like it wouldn't go through at all. But they were able to make it happen, swapping out Brogdon for Marcus Smart. And the Clippers dropped out of the deal, and instead of them, the Grizzlies swung in, and they were the third team in the deal, which is definitely an interesting piece for the Celtics to add. You know, they came close to the NBA Finals. They've kind of been on the cusp of reaching or getting a championship for a little while now. And you'd think Porzingis is the one thing that they'd kind of need to get over the hump. And so my question to you, Simon, would be, do you think Porzingis will be that piece for them? Do you think this is what pushes them to a championship, or do you think it's another kind of lateral move for them?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, because I think it is a really, really good addition all over. Because obviously, Porzingis, he's solid everywhere on the court. He had a block and a half per game last year. Pretty solid in the paint. The one interesting thing is the Celtics already have a lot of big men. They already have Al Horford. They already have Robert Williams. And I don't know if Porzingis is probably better than both of them. I feel like, he's better than both of them. And obviously it is an improvement, but I don't know if it's an improvement they necessarily needed. I feel like he would have been fine with Al Horford down there. But I mean, he's averaged, we were talking about this before, he's averaged between 20 to 23 points per game for the last 5 years. And obviously bringing that onto the team is going to be awesome. I feel like the Celtics are going to really benefit from that. But at the same time, you're also losing, not arguably, your best defensive player, especially in the backcourt, in Marcus Smart, who averages steal and a half, and was probably guarding the best guard on the other side on the other teams for most of the time. So I'm just curious who's going to replace Smart defensively for the Celtics. That's interesting to me. And I mean, I don't hate it. I hated it at the beginning, I will say that. Because, and we did talk about this again, the DC effect. I did not realize Porzingis had been averaging 23 points last year. And I don't know how I didn't, because obviously a guy like Porzingis averaging 23 points, if he was still on the Knicks, you'd be hearing about that all the time. But because he's playing for the Wizards, who cares, right? So it's really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I personally think it's kind of, you mentioned lateral as one of the options. I feel like it's not a big enough improvement for me to say that it's going to be the game-changing move that takes them to the next level, but it's also definitely not a bad move.
Yeah, you wonder how much of it was made out of desperation too, because if you're looking at that original trade where they don't give up Marcus Smart and they get to keep him, do you think that would be less of a lateral move and more of an actual improvement if they give up Malcolm Brogdon instead of Marcus Smart?
I would definitely say that would have been a better move for the Celtics. I think Brogdon is not as, while he's still a great player in his own right, not as much as a defensive guy. And obviously, the way I look at it is you trade Brogdon instead, and you're trading an offensive guy for an offensive guy. right? You're trading Brogdon and bringing in another guy who's going to replace his points. And while Porzingis is going to do that in a half for what he brings in to replace Marcus Smart, because he doubles Smart in point per game average, but that's not the point, right? It's not the important thing. It's obviously the defensive presence that Marcus Smart brings, and who's going to step up to replace that is the thing that I keep going back to whenever I think that. So you again asked if I would have preferred to trade Brogdon. Hell yeah, I would have moved Brogdon in a heartbeat over Marcus Smart, because Marcus Smart is also a guy. He's been a Celtic his entire career. He's a loyal guy. He wanted to retire a Celtic. You like all the things that came out about the trade are saying that Marcus Smart was devastated about it and obviously wanted to stay with the Celtics, but that's the game. That's basketball. So
Yeah.
that's that, I guess.
You wonder how much of it was made out of desperation after the first one fell through, because it was done so quickly, right? I remember just kind of checking the score again and again and again throughout the day, just kind of keeping up with the news, seeing at about like noon that the first trade had gone through, seeing at about like 8 p.m. that it had fallen through, it wasn't going to happen, and then only like 2 hours later, the real trade was announced with Smart going to the Grizzlies. Which I think is interesting, how quickly they were able to rebound and get another team in on it. Like how...
I think it's a really good trade for the Grizzlies, I'd argue. They're bringing, after, obviously, everybody's heard about John Morant's going to be out for the first 25 games. They're bringing in a guy who cannot replace John Morant. John Morant is one of the best point guards in the league, but you're bringing in a guy who is better defensively, and of all people to bring in to replace John Morant, I'm sure that's not the worst. That's not a terrible guy to bring in. He's a very, very good backup point guard when John Morant comes back. Maybe he can even sneak into the starting lineup and play shooting guard. Who knows? But I think it'll be interesting to see how they use it.
Yeah, it definitely will be. And you kind of look at it and think, like, if there's any real winner of the trade, that might be the Grizzlies. Because look at what the Wizards didn't get back too much either. They got Tyus Jones from the Grizzlies, Danilo Galliani from the Celtics, as well as Mike Muscala and the 35th pick in the draft. Like, they're not getting too much, and they dealt the biggest name in the draft, right? Whereas the Grizzlies are getting Marcus Smart, the Celtics are getting Porzingis, the 25th pick in the draft, and another first-round pick, which is quite interesting. So they're getting Porzingis and a couple firsts. But like, really, like, what are the Wizards getting from this, right? Like, you wonder why they make that deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too sure on that one. I'd say, I don't know. I'd say, actually, after looking at it a bit more, I'd say the Celtics won. Getting Porzingis and 2 firsts is a hell of a pull, to be honest with you. And, I mean, again, you're losing your best defensive player, but who knows? If you can find the right guy to step up and replace him, then it works out for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I wonder...
And like I did mention, the Grizzlies are also winning there. They're getting a very, very solid player, too.
This is true. They, the 2 first-round picks kind of got lost in the shuffle, right? You don't... When you hear how this was covered, it was all about Porzingis and Smart, but the fact that the Celtics were able to get 2 first-round picks for that adds quite a bit, right? And
yeah, for sure. It's definitely a big part of it. It's not the first thing that stuck out to me, like you said, but it's definitely a little bit of an extra push for me to say that they probably won it. Although, like I said, it's tough for me because I really think that a defensive guard like Marcus Smart can be so valuable to these contending teams. When you need to defend guys going up the Eastern Conference, you're talking like all these elite guards on the Eastern side. It's so hard to find the right guy to do that, and Marcus Smart was capable of doing that. And now you're gonna have to find a new guy to slide into that role. And I don't think the Celtics are gonna have an easy time doing that at all.
Yeah, I find this interesting. So I'm not really sure how this. So the webs on NBA.com, I'm looking. The Grizzlies. It says that the Celtics received the 25th pick in the draft. I don't know how accurate that is though, because looking at the draft from today, the Grizzlies still owned the pick. That's interesting.
That is interesting. I don't know on that.
Let's see.
Could it have been or that would make sense. I'm not sure.
Let me see. I know this is part of the whole story too, is how messy this trade was, right? There were so many pieces going back and forth. Yeah, I'm still seeing that the Celtics supposedly.
I'm looking at the entire thing and it's pretty confusing.
Yeah, the Celtics supposedly received the 25th overall pick, but in the actual draft, the Grizzlies are the one who picked. They picked Marcus Sasser, point guard from Houston.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, overall, I said who I think won it. I think it's close. I think it's the Celtics. I think that the Grizzlies are close second, though. Who do you think won?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. Although it'll be interesting to see how Smart does in Memphis, because that'll be, once Ja Morant comes back, is he the thing that kind of puts that team over the top? That extra defensive. He seems like the perfect kind of depth player that they need to provide the defensive support.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, because when I think of Ja Morant, I do think he's not a bad defender by any means, but he's definitely not. He's an average defender, right? Like, you're not going to get anything special on the defensive side from Ja Morant. But you slide Marcus Smart in there at shooting guard to maybe cover the point guard instead, and all of a sudden, it's a different story, right? All of a sudden, you're a lot better off, I'd argue. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him, because who knows? Marcus Smart is a decently... He's not I don't believe he's a small guy either. So I don't think... I feel like he can guard a lot of different players. And he's 6'4". That's not bad. He can definitely still guard a small forward. And like, there's a lot of different ways that a player like him can be used. And like you said, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Grizzlies use him.
So, okay, I'll before we end it, I'll clear up the confusion. I think I figured out what happened. It is confusing. So, the original trade was that Boston got the 25th overall pick. They said the trade because that trade happened during the draft, after the draft began. It says the trades are not confirmed until the next day. So they, the Grizzlies traded the pick to the Celtics before the draft happened, and then
the Celtics told them who to take.
No, the Celtics, and then they made another trade with that pick, sending it to Detroit. So Detroit acquired the draft rights to Marcus Sasser, who was taken with the 25th pick, and then Boston acquired the rights to the player that the Pistons took, as well as 2 future second-round picks. So in the end, Boston got a future first-round pick in 2024. The player that Detroit took, who I believe was at the start of the second round, and 2 future second-round picks. So it's basically 3 second-round picks, a first-round pick, and Porzingis was the return for Boston. Very complicated, but that's how it ultimately played out.
Okay. Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
You lost me a minute ago. But the important thing, Celtics got a couple... It sounds like everybody got their guy, everybody wins. Simon doesn't need one. That's the important thing.
As we're kind of in the depths of the NFL offseason, not too much to talk about. This is kind of the start of the time of year where people will start throwing out position rankings, throwing out off-season power rankings, how they think each team will do, and starting to see some conversation around the New England Patriots. There's a recent ranking that came out by Bill Barnwell, I believe, that ranked their overall position group talent, I think, 26th.
Yep.
And that's got some people up in arms. Because they got some talent on the roster. They've got Hunter Henry, they've got Mike Gesicki at tight end, probably one of the deepest tight end rooms in the league. They've got Juju, they've got Devontae Parker, and then Mac Jones is kind of the enigma behind it all. What do you kind of think of the Patriots going into next year? I think they're one of the teams that's hardest to grasp, and I think it's kind of fair to place them anywhere from that bottom half of the league to somewhere in the middle. What are your thoughts about how they'll do next season?
I mean, it completely just depends on how good, if Mac Jones can bounce back, and obviously, like you just said, And you pointed out that Barnwell ranked him 26th. I feel like that's pretty fair. But I think the interesting thing is they were 26th last year as well, which is the only reason I have a hard time kind of, because I think they did improve. That's the one thing, right? Like you look at, they added Smith-Schuster, who, say what you want about him, but I personally still think he's a good receiver. I think that he could be a pretty good piece for them. Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, obviously that's, you said that might be one of the best tight end groups. I'd argue it probably is the deepest tight end room. I can't even think of another room that has two tight ends like that on the same roster, right? I feel like there's a lot of things here. I feel like for the offense anyway, all the pieces are there for Mac Jones. I think it's just whether you can put them all together and turn into having another. The Patriots' future completely relies on how good Mac Jones does this year. The pressure's on, all that. I could say 1,000 different things. The biggest thing that'll determine everything is just how good Mac Jones can do with what he has.
And he had a good rookie year, right? Last year was just such a step back for him from where he was. That's what has people concerned. And you can tell it has
sophomore slump.
You can tell it has Bill Belichick concerned too, or else we wouldn't have seen Bailey Zappi get any playing time. But, of course, they benched him midway through the season. They had Zappi play a couple of games. It really shows a lack of confidence in Mac from Bill. It's really
and just to throw something out there, what do you think the odds are of us seeing Bailey Zappi again this year by like week 8?
Pretty high. I'd say pretty high.
Pretty high?
Yeah.
So you're not high on Mac Jones then?
I'm not. I think he has potential to be your perfect kind of game manager quarterback. He's never going to be top 10. He's never going to be top 10. But does he have...
I definitely agree with you on that, yeah.
Does he have potential to be like a solid starter? Like, if the team around him is really good, could he win a Super Bowl? Yeah, I think so. Like, he's not going to... At his peak, he's not going to bring your team down. He's going to run the offense, and he's going to be kind of the perfect just distributor. But I also don't think, like... Well, he does have a decent supporting cast. I don't think it's exactly what he needs. So you say you're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster, and I agree. I don't think he's quite as bad as people think he is. Always when players have these kind of like slight character issues, like this whole TikTok dancing on logos, like that makes people see him as worse than he actually is. But for him, well, I do think he's better, and he got a bounce back year in Kansas City. He is listed right now as their number 1 receiver. That is yikes. If Juju Smith-Schuster is your number 1...
How much do you value Devontae Parker as a number 2? I guess that's my run-up question after that.
I've always been a big fan of Devontae Parker. I think he's a really good player. His thing is inconsistency. A lot of the times he's banged up. A lot of the times he's hurt. A lot of the times he can't reach those like moments of like, oh, like, holy crap, like this guy is something special. You see that for like a couple of games, and then it kind of fizzles out. He gets hurt. He has a couple down games. He's not a number 1 because you can't rely on him enough to be that consistent presence that you would need from a number 1 receiver. He's a good secondary piece for Mac Jones. You're not looking at, when you look at this Patriots receiver room, you're not looking at like the Titans receiver room, where their number 1 receiver is second-year Treylon Burks. Like, that's rough. You're not looking at that. They have some depth there. Devontae Parker is a perfectly fine, could be even above average number 2. You just don't have a clear number 1. You don't have a player that Mac Jones can be like, oh man, like running out of options, being chased out of the pocket. Who's the guy I find? For Mahomes, it's Kelsey, which maybe one of these tight ends can be that for Mac Jones. Like, I think Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett. I think back when he was in Arizona, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, you always got to have that one guy for, especially for a younger quarterback, that can be your security blanket. And I don't think he really has.
And I was gonna say, I think you hit it right at the end there. I think that's huge for a young guy to have that guy just to throw it up, F it, somebody's out there somewhere, right? Like the Patrick Mahomes quote, something like that. Anyway, it's important to have that for a young guy and for their development. And Mac Jones has never really had that. I mean, Well, that's not controversial to say he hasn't had that.
The
And
Patriots have a
what
terrible
when
record of receivers.
Yeah. And the one thing, though, when I look at this roster, I see, and this might be controversial to say, but this is just my opinion. I think that this team either has the potential to be the, like Barnwell said, 26th ranked offense. They're going to suck, yada, yada, yada. Or Mac Jones bounces back. We see the juju we saw in 2018 somehow. Devontae Parker gains a little bit of consistency. You could see an offense here that's pretty damn good. They have there's a lot of pieces here. It's just that's a lot. I just said a lot of things that could happen. That's
And
the issue,
it's going
right?
to take a lot for those to happen.
Yep.
Like
but
you're
I'd
really
say,
stretching it.
yeah, because obviously you start off, Mac Jones could bounce back, right? Obviously, you can say the chances of that happening, chances of it not happening, yada, go on forever. The chances Juju has a Pro Bowl level year, maybe not Pro Bowl, but an improved season past what he did with Kansas City, keeps on improving, becomes that true number one. Again, fat could there. Devontae Parker gaining a little bit more consistency, getting even better, yada, yada, yada. I could go on and on. There's so many different coulds there that just really make it hard for me to say right now that I think that this Patriots team is going to have a bounce back year next year.
Yeah.
They don't have any guys who I keep going back to this. You mentioned consistency with Devontae Parker. I'd argue that's the situation with 90% of this team. There is a bunch of guys who have had great years before, have the chance to have one again, but to succeed with this team, you need all of these guys to line up, have career years all at the same time, and that's just not something that's going to happen.
No, it's not. And I mean, we talked about this a little bit with our hockey segment, but the Patriots right now are floating in mediocrity. If Mac Jones peaks, they are 16th best offense in the league. They're not going to be amazing.
The Patriots are currently the Calgary Flames of the NFL.
Yeah, which would be a good... I wish that was the comparison we made like 5 years ago as a Flames fan.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But now it's
well, imagine if we had Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm. But the Patriots, I don't know. The Patriots, for me, I wouldn't be... I mean, maybe give it a few more years. I wouldn't be shocked if Bill Belichick says, this is my time to move on. That's maybe a little bit of a... Yeah. Think of the outlook for the Patriots. If you're a Patriots fan, how much hope do you have for the next 5 years? I would say 0. Look at the teams in their division. Buffalo Bills,
I think that
Josh
totally
Allen.
just comes back to Yeah. You can with the division, that's definitely a tough division. But I think from a fan perspective, with how much hope you have, I think that just comes back to how high you are on Mac Jones.
Even if Mac Jones is good, though. Even if Mac Jones is good, he is by far the worst quarterback in that division. Even Tua has been inconsistent, but Tua's highs have been much higher than Mac Jones. Tua can lead a Dolphins team that looked genuinely scary at the start of last season. You have Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, who are a genuinely good team even before he got there. They have amazing pieces. These Patriots look like 4th place in the AFC East to me for the next 4 or 5 years. And that's even
You think that they're going to stay 4th even when Aaron Rodgers leaves?
Yeah, because I think the Jets will have someone else. Because the Jets roster around Aaron Rodgers is young and good. You've got Garrett Wilson. You've got that entire receiver room is awesome. You have Breece Hall in the backfield. You have, hopefully, Mekhi Becton can come back from injuries. You've got a good young offensive line there. On defense, you've got some really good pieces. You've got Sauce Gardner in the secondary. You've got, who's their guy they got from Cincinnati? They got Carl Lawson, who's hopefully coming back from injury. They've got Quinnen Williams. There is a lot of good young pieces on that team. And that is much better than anything the Patriots have. This is kind of, for me, this is the upsetting of the balance in the AFC East. The Patriots won for 20 years straight, and I think they have to be ready to be basement dwellers for the next 4. Even if there are good pieces on this side. I don't think this offense is terrible. If they're in any it's all about competition, right? If they're in the NFC South, they might win. Are they better than the Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and Bucks at this point? Probably. They're not bad, But in the division, with the pieces that they have, as a Patriots fan, I'd say hold on to your hats because the next time a Patriots team makes the playoffs may not be with Bill Belichick.
Okay. I'm going to follow it up with 2 questions. Obviously, you said you don't think their offense is that bad. And we've spent the last 10 minutes talking about their offense. I'm now going to group their defense in there, too, when I ask this question. What do you think their record is going to be this upcoming season, if you think they're going to be 4th? And do you think that they're going to have a shot at Caleb Williams in this next draft?
I don't think they'll be quite that bad. I don't think they'll be quite that bad to get Caleb
so?
Williams because there's a lot of there's quite a few bad teams in the league right now. My mind goes to all of the teams I just mentioned in the NFC South. My mind goes to like the Commanders. Like think about that NFC East too, right? That NFC East like is the same situation as this AFC East. The East is strong because you're competing against the Cowboys, Giants, and the NFC champion Eagles. As the Commanders, okay, Simon, can you name me the Commanders starting QB right now?
I plead the 5th.
Yes, exactly. Is
it Heineke?
Not anymore. Heineke's on the Falcons now. He's a backup on the Falcons.
Isn't Wentz gone too?
Yep, it's Sam Howell. It's Sam Howell. Yep. Yeah. You got it. Got it. But think about how long that took you, right? Like nobody knows and cares about the Commanders at this point. They could be really bad.
That's a win. I don't care what you're talking about. That's a win.
You did good, Simon. You did good. But my point being that like there's other teams that are worse. There's other teams that are going to be very bad, like Jacksonville Jaguars of the very late 2010s bad.
Yeah.
The Patriots, so you asked me to give a record prediction. I'd say somewhere around the 6-11. I'd say anywhere from 5-12 to 7-10, 8-9 kind of. 8-9 if everything goes right. If everything goes right, they're an 8-9 football team. I'm thinking more accurately they get 5 or 6 wins.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. I would definitely agree with you on the fact that they're not going to get Caleb Williams. I asked that thinking that as well. I definitely would lean towards them if Mac Jones bounces back, probably in that 7-win range, like you said. For some reason, I have a hard time seeing the Patriots only get 5 wins. Like you said, I don't know why. When I look at this roster, I don't think that's a 5-win roster. I see a mediocre 7-win roster, but that's if Mac Jones bounces back.
But Simon, the thing you have to keep into consideration is not all 5-win teams are built the same. The Patriots can be a good 5-win team.
Very true.
But they have an automatic 6 losses to me in their schedule just because of their division.
You know what? Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I was not thinking about that. Yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. Okay. Guess who's back? Back again. It's Antonio Brown. Let's talk about that. Antonio Brown flames Tom Brady for his dramatic NFL exit. And that's all I wrote in my notes for this, just for context for anybody watching this. Because I like to have notes going into anything that I do. I like to just have a couple things written down just so I can try and kind of put it all together when I do talk about it. This one is just funny to me. I don't know about you, Caleb, but this is just like, at this point, why are we even still talking about this guy?
Yeah, I mean, he demands like all of your attention just because of how like absolutely insane he is. That the latest. I mean, this is just the latest, and still a series of just dumbassery. He obviously he had everything that led up to him running out of the MetLife Stadium without a shirt on. But like even now, he's still in the news because he's owns some sort of team in some sort of like arena football league or something, and he's like not paying his players. Like,
oh, I didn't hear about that. I heard him getting fined for something or other. I didn't hear about him not paying his players.
Yeah, he owns. I gotta get more.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
He owns some sort of arena football team.
Yeah,
the arena football team is preparing a lawsuit against him because he didn't pay his players.
He probably doesn't even have the money.
Oh no, he
Dude,
doesn't. Yeah, he owns the he owns the Albany Empire.
How much money do you think his rap album really made?
Can you make negative money? Did you listen to that?
I did. I did back then, but it's been.
Oh my god, it's been years, but I can still hear the echoes. It's like, I think that's etched into my brain forever as the worst thing that's ever graced my ear canals. It was horrendous, but
I can say that I could say the opposite, because I think that it's one of those things where I feel like once I hear it, I'll instantly just faint in like it's just gonna all come back to me, and they're gonna have to like put me in one of the, the suits. Like I'm gonna be stuck in like a white pillow room for like a year. It's gonna be one of those things. I feel like my brain has permanently forgot that for me. But
I think your brain did you a service.
It probably did. We can probably talk about what Antonio Brown's claims are, which are interesting to me. Just hearing, obviously, we've already heard Tom Brady, Bruce Arians' side of it. Now Antonio Brown has been releasing his thing 1 year at a time, like a Marvel movie. We're probably gonna get like the big thing in like 10 years where they like bring together him and like, I don't know, who's another guy. It's gonna be like some sort of big Avengers thing. Who knows? I'm going down a different thing, but he claimed that the Bucks forced him to play through an injury. Obviously, that's the first one that's kind of interesting. I don't know if there's anybody's really done any actual research into that. If there's anything that, like, if there's any proof Antonio Brown was injured. He also said that the Bucks treated him like a dog, and Tom Brady gassed him up into saying he'd throw to him 12 times in the Jets game. So those are the three things that I did write down about what he did say, because the rest of it was complete nonsense. I'm not even going to lie to you. I've read a lot of Sports Illustrated articles in my time. I don't even know with this. It's all over the place. Like, not to anything with Antonio Brown.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if there was some sort of truth behind all of it. Like, a lot of NFL players play through injuries, right? Like, yeah. I read
in any sport, that's not an uncommon thing.
No, I read when I like a couple of years ago Steve Young's autobiography, and he talked about like playing through some insane injuries back in his day. He like tore something or other in his knee, and they sent in the NFC Championship, and they just sent him back in the locker room, gave him like as many painkillers as they had, and sent him back out there.
3 pounds of steroids.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be shocked if he was playing through some sort of injury.
Of course.
But it's because it's Antonio Brown, it's just he makes a bigger deal out of it than it like is, right? I'm sure those things happened, but picture this, like a conversation with Tom Brady where he's like, bro, like I'm so excited to get you out here, like I'm gonna hit you like 10 to 12 times. Like he's like,
does that sound like
obviously
Tom Brady?
Is obvious. I can't do my best Tom Brady, but he's.
Oh, like, no, that's not what I mean. I just mean like the quote itself. Do you think that actually sounds like there's truth behind that?
I honestly I do. Like that just
really?
Sounds like a guy who's trying to recruit someone to his team and like using hyperbole. Like, okay, but that's not realistic. Nobody's gonna get like Travis Kelce doesn't get 10 to 12 receptions a game.
And if anybody would, it'd be him.
Yeah, like sure he does hit that sometimes, but it's not like he's like, oh, like it's gonna happen every game. Oh, like it's gonna be because it's all situational, right? Like you can't guarantee that you're gonna get 12 passes a game if the other team locks in on you. Well, it's just Antonio Brown making a bigger deal out of like small things than which has been his whole MO this whole time, right?
And the thing with Antonio Brown is obviously, the thing that I think ran him out of the league is I think obviously he got older, he got worse, and by the time he obviously gonna go back to this quote, the Bucks treated him like a dog. You got to look at it like this. On that Bucks team, he was the third, or maybe even, depending on where you put Miller on that team, fourth receiver in that entire thing.
He was better than Miller. You
think so?
Give his he's crazy, but he was talented. Like
You still think... Okay, you know what? We don't need to go down this rabbit hole. But, okay, third receiver. You have to realize as the third string receiver, even if you're the slot guy, even if you're the whatever, you're not going to be treated as the number one, which is what he expects everywhere he goes. Even if he signs somewhere now, in his 30s, all these different things, he expects to be treated like he's that number one guy when he's just not. Like, he's talented. Everybody knows that. Everybody's been saying that about Antonio Brown forever. But he's not the same guy he was when he was 25 even now, right? Or when he was on the Bucs either. Which is why it's just, I feel like maybe Antonio Brown expected to be continuingly treated like he was the best receiver in the league when he wasn't even close. And I think that's kind of the thing. Most NFL players, I feel, or most any players in any sport, as they get worse, probably get a little bit more humble, become a little bit more okay with the idea of kind of playing behind a couple guys, becoming more of a leader, while Antonio Brown was like, no, or probably was, who knows, right? But in my head, that's what I picture whenever I think of Antonio Brown. I think of a guy who can't accept the fact that he's getting old and getting worse, and he just wants to be treated like the number one.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just classic narcissism. To him, he's the center of the entire world, and I think you're exactly right. He's getting older. He's not as good as he was in his Pittsburgh heyday, and he can't live with that fact, so he blames it on everybody else. Right? It's just he's a classic narcissist. If I ever were to need to define narcissist for someone, you can just play the video of Antonio Brown running out of the stadium, right?
Can I play you some Antonio Brown lowlights?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up the podcast. Thanks to anybody who's watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening to it, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, Apple, wherever that is. Make sure to check it out on a different platform, because as the person editing all this, I can promise you that there's usually a different version for each one because of how stupid it is to edit that stuff. And once again, thanks for watching or listening. Make sure to follow, subscribe, whatever the word is for each platform, because it feels like it's different on each one. And make sure also check out all the clips that we'll be putting up everywhere, because we're going to put segments up on YouTube. We're going to have clips up on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, wherever else you can find it. And one last final thank you for getting through the entire thing, because as someone who has to listen to myself talk every day, it's impressive to make it through an hour and a half, I can tell you that much.